should be fine. Okay, awesome. All right, guys, welcome to the PJ Test Prep feedback seminar, results and tips seminar for the 2 Culver mock tests that we just did. Many of you were here for our SAT test yesterday. Others were here for the ACT test a little bit further back. I want to welcome everybody though back, and I hope in this hour here we can cram in a ton of really useful stuff for you guys. It was really cool of the Culver City High PTSA to put this on. Almost all of the money from you guys' payments will be going directly back to the PSA. We're just covering the costs of doing the grading and stuff, but they're going to get 95% of it back in donations. So they appreciate that from you guys. I appreciate you being here, learning more about this test, and I'm going to try to make this as sweet as I possibly can for you guys. So let me just start with brief introductions. Let me share my screen actually, first of all. I am Paul Jury. I'm the founder of PJ Test Prep. My last name is just like in the court. Feel free to make fun of it if you like. Some suggestions include injury, forgery, grand jury, perjury, or if I ever went to England and got knighted, I would be surgery. My first name is less interesting. I'd like to think I was named after Pope Paul, who's a pretty sweet pope, or St. Paul, which is the city in Minnesota where I was born. But I'm actually named Paul because my parents squeezed me out late in the fiscal year in December, and their accountant said, guys, that was really good timing because now you're going to get a tax write-off for the entire previous year. And they were so stoked that they high-fived and named me after their accountant, whose name was Paul. So nerdily appropriate for somebody who runs a test prep company, I suppose. So I want to welcome everybody. I want to get a quick sense. Well, this is sort of a test to make sure everybody can hear me okay, but also I want to get a sense for what years we're working with here. I know we got a lot of great Culver High folks. Raise your hand or do the virtual hand raise thing, or say in the chat, or just turn your camera on for a second, give me a thumbs up if you are currently a junior or representing a junior. I would imagine that's a sizable body of our group. Okay, awesome. Yeah, looks like a lot of juniors. As far as
because he's sharing a screen.
Oh, okay. Sophomores, anybody sophomores in here? Okay, I know we had some signups.
I'm doing volume.
And I'm gonna go ahead and mute a couple more people who still have their speakers on here. And any seniors? Anybody who's a senior here? Trying to sneak in one last round of the test here. Okay. Probably imagine that most seniors have sort of given up at this point. Not that they should have given up necessarily, but obviously this year is a very, very strange year, and a lot of schools are not requiring the SAT, ACT this year. It's also getting kind of late in the game. You could certainly still sneak one more in, but since we don't have any of those, we won't say too much about that. But guys, we're going to try to give you as much as we can on some different areas of the test. And I've got a little game plan here running down the side of the sheet here. We're going to be talking about all aspects of understanding the tests. I actually should add to this intro and what do my scores mean. I'll talk about that first. We're in the middle of the intro here. We're going to talk about test logistics in terms of when to take the test, whether I should take the test, which one should I take, how many times, all that great stuff there. And then the most interesting part, of course, is we'll be raising scores. How do we crank these scores up higher in order to give you guys the most open doors possible? I see Janine Davis and Honda and Alex have their hands up. Did you guys have questions? If you want, you can type those in the chat, although we will be doing a Q&A period after. If you're asking about where your score is, you want to email Lisa at pjtestprep.com about that. Probably she just needs a format update from you, or she has sent it and it's in your spam folder. But if you can't get it to look at during this, it's not the end of the world. We're not going to go over specific test questions from your test. We'll handle that. Hondas, did you guys have a question? Okay, cool. Well, if not,
no, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yes.
No, we didn't. I was raising my hand for junior.
Oh, perfect. Okay, gotcha.
Thanks. Sweet. Sorry.
No worries. I think I can lower hand. There we go. You'd think I'd spent 97 zillion hours on Zoom. You think I'd know every feature by now, but we're all still learning how to do a pandemic together. In any case, guys, I want to start with two things. First, what your scores mean so that you can look these over. And then I'm going to tease you guys with a little bit of kind of pre-score improvement stuff here that we're going to talk about. But first, I know you guys are looking at your test results, so I want to talk about that right off the bat and just get a sense of what your handouts in front of you look like, what they mean, and what does that mean for your college chances. So real quick, guys, here we can see a SAT result from Joe Blow here, who took the test yesterday and ended up scoring, as you can see here, a 1070 total. Now, where that comes from is that's the verbal score, the reading and writing put together, and the math score. So 520 and 550 makes 1070, which is a little bit above average. And a little bit above average, I know, average in your high school classes is a C, but this is a little above average of like every college-bound junior in the country who seriously sat down and took an SAT. So better than average is really good. That means there's lots of schools that are interested because you're, in the top half of all college candidates. Some people obviously want to do better than just a little bit above average, but this is not a bad score. I get this all the time. My niece finally took the SAT yesterday, and her mom's like, every single one of her friends got a 1300. I'm like, I doubt that, because 13 out of 100 people ever score higher than a 1300. So I think 2 of them got a 1300 and the rest are just lying about it, or they secretly got an 800 and they're not saying anything. So don't compare your score to other people. Really the best thing to do to look and see if your score is where you want it to be is go look up, your dream school's average SAT acceptance. So, let's say you really, really want to go to Pepperdine, and you can look up Pepperdine average SAT score, and let's see, boom, there it is. Pepperdine's a pretty hard school to get into, so they're looking at probably low 1200s up to even into the 1300s, 1400 maybe at the higher end. That's pretty competitive. But if you're trying to go to Podunk Rainy River Junior College, or I hate to always make fun of any particular state, but I grew up in Minnesota, so there's lots of schools around there, like Minnesota State. Average SAT score is going to be a little bit lower. That's going to be probably around 880 to 1160 or 19 to 24 on the ACT. So that student we just looked at would already be a very competitive candidate at Minnesota State Mankato. So it just depends on where you're looking. People say, what's a good score? It's like, well, if you're sitting here on a Sunday evening in November learning about the SAT, you're going to college. Like, don't worry about that. You're going to go to college. You probably have several options. Just the question is, how many doors will you have open? And if you really, really must go to Stanford or Yale or something, well, then you're going to need to obviously score a little higher than you would to go to Mankato State. So that's generally the rule about what your scores will mean. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but I want to dig into what these score breakdowns mean, because actually this handout that you got is a very useful tool. And this first page here is not the most important page. Sure, this is your score, but this is a score on a mostly meaningless practice test. Yes, it's just like the SAT that you'll take someday, so it's a good indicator, but you may not have tried your hardest. You may realize that, okay, I'll probably study a little more, try a little harder before my real SAT. So it's not like this is your score. You'll probably go up from here, especially if you do some prep or something. But the best thing you can really look at here is on this next tab, we've got practice test Julie answers, where you can see every single question that you got right and wrong. And this is useful for things like studying the actual questions. One of the big things we're going to learn about the SAT and ACT here today is that the test has to be the same every single time. That's what standardized means. And so if you missed question, 11 on section 3 of the math, and you look it up and it's a systems of equations problem, and you're like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot how to do those. Well, learn how to do them, because you're going to see that exact question again, more or less, on your actual test. So this is really a useful page for going forward and studying. You can also learn interesting trends from it. Like this kid, Joe Blow, look how well he did on the first 2 reading passages. He got almost every single question right. So that demonstrates that this kid, when he's taking his time, can really do well. But then the wheels sort of come off the rickshaw here. And although he has a few moments of excellence, he really loses it towards the end. And he would say, oh yeah, no, I was getting really rushed. I spent forever on the first two passages. And then I realized I was getting way behind. So I started going way faster. His solution might be try to speed up a little, but maybe you just try to get 3 or 4 passages done well instead of rushing to get through these last 3, because frankly, he didn't do that much better than statistically randomly guessing on these last couple. So we should try to find that middle ground in order to improve that. Same was sort of true on the writing, where he did well and then got slow at the end. By the way, I just made this kid score up, so I'm not picking on somebody's actual score. That would be too mean. Math, same way. And he can look and see, wow, like numbers 11 and 12, oh, that's where the math section gets harder anyway. Maybe I shouldn't have spent so much time on that. Maybe I should have spent more time on the grid ends. He didn't even answer this one. Here, same deal. He really did badly on the grid end section of section 4. And these aren't actually very hard, these first couple grid ends, because the easy to hard pattern resets. So maybe next time he would skip a couple of these hard ones here and instead spend his time there, and that would allow him to get more questions right. So this is good in terms of studying like how the test broke down overall, and also just which individual test questions you missed. And when we do some strategy work later, you'll have some better tools to better equip yourself there. So that was the SAT. For those of you who did the ACT, this is Josephine Blosephine, Joe's sister, with a different but weirdly parody last name. Anyway, the ACT thing looks very similar. The ACT averages out your scores from the 4 sections. She did really, really well on the reading. 31 is very high. Like, that's a great score. Math, that is her weakness. She really wants to work on that section, and then to some extent science. And similarly, this looks like Daniel was taken, so you want to go to PT Daniel answers, and she can see which ones she got right and wrong as well. This is the correct answer, and that's the one that you actually put here. I got a couple of chat questions. Hold on. Oh, never mind. Junior here. Thank you, Laura. So those are what these score breakdowns look like. And I would really encourage you guys, like, frankly, the best thing you can do out of this is read these through. And like, if you can even fix, on the SAT, every question's worth about 10 points. So for every question that you can say, I missed that one, but okay, I see how to do it now. I bet I could get it next time. That's like raising your score 10 points. So if Joe's goal is to get, instead of an 1170, his goal is to, or excuse me, a 1070 to get a 1200, he just needs to find 13 questions he can fix on the entire test. He missed like 70 of them. So they're, only fixing 13 would get him up competitive at a school like Pepperdine even. So consider those. And as far as what your scores mean, I have this handy little chart here. As I said before, if you didn't score that well today and got an 820, which is a little below average, that's still college. Like, colleges are going to let you in with a 17 on the ACT, with an 820 on the ACT. Probably not Harvard, but there's lots of schools that are cool with that. That's the reason that the NCAA minimum, like if you want to play sports in college, you have to get a 17 on your ACT. But that would imply that there are kids going to these colleges that don't have a 17 on their ACT. This is about the average, and this will open up more schools for you. Yeah, there's like 50 sweatshirt schools that everybody wants to go to, but there's like thousands, well, depending on how you classify them, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 colleges in the US, and most of them are accepting 60, 70, 80% of their applicants. It's just those top 50 to 100 schools that are crazy competitive. If you are looking at those fancy schools, this is the like really good score range. 1,300 is quite high. Like I said, only 13 out of 100 people will ever score that high. 28 is roughly the equivalent on the ACT. This type of score makes you now eligible for pretty much anywhere. I know, some schools are so crazy competitive, like Stanford accepts 7% of its applicants or whatever. And, 1,300 is on the low end for Stanford, but it's friggin' Stanford. So, cut yourself a break here. My only advice for really competitive schools is make sure you apply to more than one, because you never really know who's going to arbitrarily let you in. I went to Northwestern, a school that never should have let me in based on my mediocre high school GPA, but I was good at figuring out how tests worked and how essays were written. And so they're like, yeah, why not? Let's see what's the worst that could happen. But some kid with a 4.5 GPA didn't get in there because of me, and who knows why. And The same thing can work with the SAT and ACT as well. This is basically the perfect score here. If you can get a 33 or higher, or 1500 or higher, I think that's like the top 2-3 percentile. That's, if a school doesn't let you in at that point, it wasn't because of this. So consider, but the best advice is just, where do you want to go to school? Okay, what kind of test score are they looking at? Okay, then see if you can raise that score, or maybe you're already there and you're good. Okay, I'll talk more about that later, and all the kind of, logistics and everything. But I want to actually jump ahead, and something I meant to do at the very beginning of class, but running a little bit out of order here today. But I want to give you guys a test question that gets across a point that I hope is the one thing that you guys will pull from this seminar, if nothing else. And that is that the more you know about how these tests work, the easier this whole process is and the less scary. So let me, hold on real quick. I forgot to get my little running board there. Wacom tablets are wonderful for Zoom math problems, I find. So I'm going to look at the science problem here. And I want to show you guys something about the SAT and the ACT that I hope you can take away, if nothing else, from the seminar. And that's that the more you know about these tests, the easier they are to do well on. So here we've got a horrifying looking problem. This right here is a science problem from the ACT. And as I'm sure many of you found the other week while you were taking this, the ACT section is just so scary looking. It's that way for a reason. The idea is that they're trying to scare you off because college is scary too, and real life is scary. And they're really trying to see who can be scared and then figure out how to do the problem anyway. Here's what this problem does not require, though, is any actual science knowledge. Dirty secret about the ACT science section, you do not have to know anything about science to do extremely well on this section, because if they did require science knowledge, it wouldn't be fair. I mean, if they asked questions like, how many electrons are there in a boron atom? You'd have like 3 kids in AP Chem being like, oh, well, I know that. That's really easy. And then the rest of everyone else would be like, well, you're a boron. No, they can't actually ask science content because it wouldn't be a fair national standardized test. There are schools that don't even have chemistry programs. So what they do is they throw science concepts out there, but they put all of the answers just right here in the chart, or occasionally in the text if there is any. But a lot of these are very chart dependent things. Now they look scary, but the goal here is very simple. We're just trying to get a general idea of what's going on in the graph. So I'm going to look for things like the axes. So I've got here pressure, and I've got a double axis over here. Look, depth. As we go down, depth increases, as depth does. And then also pressure seems like it increases as we go down. Now you might know that, like you might have gone scuba diving one time, like, wait, yeah, the deeper I got, the more pressurized it was, right? But you don't even need to know that because it's written right here on the graph. And then we've got this weird thing here. What is this? Temperature? Oh, wait, temperature. Yeah, okay. So it gets hotter as we go to the right. And then here's the scary part. I've got these things called facies. I have no idea what those are. And to be honest, I don't care because I don't need to know what they are to get this question right. All I need to do is look up the words they're asking about. So they're asking me about facies G. Oh, that's facies G right here. That's this guy in yellow. Oh, okay, I don't know what that is, but I can point at it. Like a lot of this is just point and click kind of stuff here. And then we're asked what kind of pressure and temperature conditions would yield a facies G rock. Well, all I'm doing here is looking at the word facies G, and temperature is not very helpful because facies G kind of likes almost all temperatures, anything 200 or higher. But what kind of pressure does facies G like? Does it like a little bit of pressure or like a lot of pressure? Looks like kind of a lot of pressure, right? Like maybe more than 10? Anything that's like greater than 10 for pressure? So, oh, wait, so the answer is J. Wait, but what's a facies? Who cares what a facies is? You're not ever going to need to know this unless you're going to be a plate tectonic geologist, and in which case you'll figure it out in grad school at Colorado College. But you don't need to know anything about this stuff. You just need to know how the dumb test works, because that's what this is, guys. It's just a dumb test. Like, I mean, that's what life is, really. It's just a series of dumb tests. It's just signaling mechanisms to like, hey, look, I learned how to do your dumb test. Therefore I should be able to go to your college. Yeah, it's a silly system, but there's a lot that's silly about the world we live in. And in a way, isn't your work filled with like, oh, here's this dumb test that you got to figure out how it works? Well, if I compliment the boss's tie on Tuesdays, I get a promotion, but if I do it on Wednesdays, I don't. Like, I figured your system out. Now I make more money. Everything is a game. The SAT, the ACT, they're just games. And figuring out the few rules, and there really aren't that many rules to these games, will just make you better at them. And it'll make the whole process less intimidating. So you can learn a lot of these rules on your own just by studying the questions that you missed. I am happy to help you learn more. If you got somebody, who helped design the game, teaching you the shortcuts, that sometimes is more efficient. But that's the secret here, guys. Don't get intimidated. The rewards go to those who may be scared, but do it anyway. Okay, so let's get out of this and go back to quickly recapping our opening here. Guys, anybody who joined late, I know a few of you drifting in. I'm Paul Jury from PJ Test Prep. By the way, we're a boutique SAT, ACT prep company based in Hermosa. I live in Playa del Rey, so we're local. We've worked with Culver City for years and years. We do a lot of academic SAT or academic tutoring and SAT classes and prep and stuff, but whatever, all that later. Point is, we are here to teach you guys as much as we possibly can about the SAT, ACT. And let's now resume with test logistics, the second element I want to get to today, to talk about when and if you guys are going to take these tests. Okay, now things are obviously weird this year. I don't believe we have any seniors in the room. If we do, my advice is simple. You don't really need to take the SAT or ACT if you're a senior. No schools are requiring it this year because so many people got their tests canceled because of COVID. South California has been particularly bad. They really have kind of dropped the ball out here and running tests hardly at all. But they are starting to run more tests. They canceled everything over the spring and even into the summer. But my niece took it this morning. She lives in Pennsylvania. They've been running tests in all the adjacent states and other parts of California. So I suspect very shortly they'll get on back something a little bit more like normal, especially once there's vaccine news and things like that. So, well, there will be some schools that will remain test optional, or in some cases, including the UCs, they aren't even going to necessarily look at your tests. A lot of schools will still look at them. And my simple advice is probably go ahead and give it a shot. If you think it's something that's going to help you or could potentially be good, you might as well give it a try. If your test results come back not that great, less than your grades, you can always just not send them in. It's usually going to be pretty optional going forward. But my suggestion in terms of scheduling is the following. Generally, freshmen and sophomores, you sophomores, guys, don't worry that much about the SAT or the ACT yet. I know some of you are already nervous about these tests, and sure, it can be good to do practice and so forth. And you did a good thing by being here and taking a practice test, but I'm not going to recommend that sophomores turn around and take a prep class right now or something crazy. Don't worry about it. You don't have to take this test till you're a junior. Do not do it right now. There's still a pandemic. It's pointless to waste your time taking an actual SAT or ACT as a sophomore. What I would really recommend is just getting your basic skills in order. Obviously, try to get good grades in your classes because GPA and stuff does matter more than SAT and ACT. Even when there's no pandemic, they care more about that. But get your basic math skills down. Make sure you're confident and comfortable with systems of equations, stuff up through basic algebra 2. You don't need to know any pre-calc or calculus for this test, so you don't have to get that high. But make sure you like reading, read things over the summer. Make sure your grammar is solid. You can read an old-timey text written 100 years ago, and you can get basically the main idea out of it. So focus on your basic skills, but there's other things that colleges are looking at. They care most about your grades. They care about your activities and leadership positions. Those are things that you should be working on your sophomore year and your freshman year and so forth. When junior year rolls around, if you have an opportunity to do so in the fall, go ahead and take the PSAT or the plan. They didn't really offer these at many schools this year because of COVID and all that. They will be doing that again, though, in the future. And that's a great way to get some practice, see how you scored. But even if you can't take a PSAT, doing what we did here is actually better than the PSAT because it's a full length, like real SAT with a real curve. The PSAT tends to curve kind of easy. So you almost have to like subtract 100 points from your PSAT score to get an accurate SAT estimate, similarly with the plan. But junior year spring is typically the most common and advised time to take the SAT or ACT. If you just want me to give you dates, if the pandemic was not on, I would say March for the SAT. That's a great date to start with. February or April for the ACT. Those are both really good dates to start with. I like either one. Then you can retake the test in May or in June and get the thing done by the end of your junior year. So those of you who are sophomores and younger and will be doing this in non-plague times, that's what I would recommend. It's really nice to get it done in the spring of your junior year, besides the fact that you can then focus on more interesting things like doing your application essays and going to parties over the summer. It's also just your brain is really buff from like a whole year of taking AP classes. So why not, while you're in really good shape, also run a triathlon here? So it's a good for a number of reasons to do these in the spring. I would still recommend something sort of similar for you juniors who may have some test closure stuff still going on. I suspect things will be much better by February, March, April. But also just starting to try to get a test attempts in case things get canceled. You know, that it may be a little off and on during these next months. So maybe I don't know, your February ACT gets canceled, but your April one doesn't. And so you're glad you signed up for both. It might be just good to kind of pretend like we're on a normal schedule. And then if it gets pushed back, oh well, you can still maintain most of your preparation and practice and stuff that you've done. So I'm still going to softly recommend spring of junior year, but I will also say that it's always fine to take the test over the summer after your junior year is over, or even into the fall of your senior year. So although I wouldn't opt for that, if that's what ends up happening with a lot of juniors this year. It's certainly what happened with a lot of seniors. It's fine. It's not the end of the world. You can do this stuff then. Then you can focus on other things like college visits when campuses open up again, and retakes if you need. SAT, ACT, or excuse me, SAT 2 subject tests. You can do those in the fall. Although usually most SAT subject tests are better done in May or June, right after you took the AP test. So that's usually when I would recommend that. But you got other things to worry about summer and fall of your senior year. So if you can, try to do these tests a little bit earlier. Now, as I said, the virus is changing things, although we're on the improve now. I think this is more old news at this point, especially because we don't have too many seniors in here. The other thing that's changing things a little bit is the UC system, which even before the pandemic happened, had decided that they were going to start kind of phasing out the SAT and the ACT. The original plan was to remain test optional for this year, and technically they still are. There's a big lawsuit going on about whether they can use the scores at all or not. And there are a few schools like Irvine and Berkeley that aren't using scores at all, but this is all for seniors. Next year, the schools, the UCs, say that they're going to be test blind. That's probably what will happen. Test blind means they can't look at your SAT, ACTs, even if you submit them, although they could be used for things like class placement, like testing out of freshman year English, or in some cases scholarships, certainly outside scholarships. If you are not applying to anything except for UCs and Cal States, you probably don't need to take the SAT and the ACT. You still might for some scholarships if you think it's something that's going to help. And a general way to see if it's going to help is you take a practice test like you did, and then look up online how that kind of compares to the schools that you're looking at in terms of like GPA. Like if you have a 3.1 and you're trying to go to UCLA, you probably do need something to bring you back up. If they'll let you use a test score, that could be it. But it also could be a really great leadership experience or an amazing essay or something. If you have a 4.2, you know, there's not that many SAT scores that could help you. So you probably wouldn't need to do it. And since they say they're not going to require them or even look at them next year for UCs, then you probably wouldn't need to take the test. Most students, though, are applying to some UCs and also some out-of-state colleges, which although this year they're not requiring the tests, many of them will go back to doing that. So I always probably lean towards just taking it. I mean, even if you're applying to some UCs and some other schools that you're not sure if they're going to require it, what if you take it and then you just see? Like, what's the worst thing that happens? You don't end up using your score. What's the best thing that happens? It ends up helping you get into a private college you couldn't have gotten into otherwise, or get a scholarship. So it may be something that of less importance for you, depending on your school list, but more information can never hurt. And so that's typically my recommendation. Now, as far as which test goes, all schools will accept either the SAT or the ACT. So the short answer is, why not try them both and just use which one ends up being higher? Colleges will always use your higher score, so give them both a shot. Now, you don't have to do that. And if you're very much focused on one test or the other, you can just concentrate on that one. But, if you're going to try to do everything you can to get into these exclusive schools, you might as well take one more test. Like, what else are you going to do with that Saturday morning? Play Call of Duty for 4 hours? Like, your SAT will be more of a life-changing decision than getting smoked by a 12-year-old again and again. So ACT is one test, SAT is another. They end up doing the same thing, measuring your, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Test taking skills. Intelligence is obviously too strong, because at best these tests are measuring like 2 of Gardner's 7 intelligences, but they're meant to be like kind of a counterbalance to your grades. Grades are way more important, but like grades aren't perfect either. Like, we all know the kid who has a 4.9 GPA but can barely tie his shoes. He's been bribing teachers and doing extra credit work and stuff like that. And the SAT, ACT can be kind of a validator for that kid. Like, oh, you got a 4.9 GPA, but a 15 on your ACT, huh? Like, what's going on there? Are you leaving suitcases full of unmarked bills under Miss Carroll's desk? How does that fit? On the other hand, it can be a second chance for some students. I was a student like this too. I mean, I'm making fun of my GPA earlier. It was fine. Like, I had a good GPA, but at my high school, there was a lot of grade padding and stuff going on. So I technically wasn't even in the top 10% of my class, which is, like, there's no way a school like Northwestern should let me go there. But I was like, no, I really am a special and unique snowflake, I promise. And they're like, well, prove it. Here's this hard test. And I was like, oh, okay, I like tests. I'll learn this. And then that allowed me to show something else about my personality. Somebody who had even worse grades and is way, way smarter than me, Steve Jobs, you might have heard of him. He had a 2.8 in high school. But if Steve Jobs wanted to go to your college and you're an admissions officer, you should probably let that guy in. That's a lot of donation money you're passing up there. But how do you know? Like, how do you know that this guy with a 2.8 has a 2.8 because he's too busy building robots in his basement, versus some other Stefan Jobes is too busy doing something else in his basement? That's why he has a 2.8. The test gives more information. And so giving them a chance to see an ACT or an SAT score, or giving yourself a chance to see, may teach you that you're sharper than you thought based on your grades. It may also be a really good way to say, yes, my grades slipped sophomore year, but here, look at this. Like, obviously I can take care of business when I need to. Now, in terms of which tests, like I said, they're mostly the same. The tests are about 75% the same. Content-wise, they're very similar. It's the same grammar concepts on both tests, same math concepts. They focus a little bit more and less on certain things, but there really aren't any concepts that they will throw at you on one and not the other. They used to do like circle formula on the ACT and system of equations on the SAT, but now they kind of do both on both. So give both a try and see which one you like better. Now, there are some differences, and there are 2 differences that sometimes help people say, you know what, the SAT sounds more like my kind of test. I'm going to focus on that one. One of them is the styles of the test. The ACT is known as the fast but simple test. It has 100 or 215 questions in 2 hours and 55 minutes, not including the essay. The SAT gives you 5 more minutes for way fewer questions. Wait, well, how is that possible? Is the SAT way easier? Oh no, the questions are mean. The SAT questions are very tricky. They're complex, they're multi-layered. You got to think about them more. You got to dig a little deeper. Some people hate that. Some people would rather just do the like easier, more straightforward questions and go way faster on the ACT. Some people cannot handle that time pressure though. The ACT is so fast. What's hard is getting through all those questions so quickly. The SAT doesn't have that. They let you take your time, but the questions will be meaner. So some people prefer going fast. Other people like doing more complicated questions. Some people don't like doing either, but I don't know what to tell you in that case. The other thing that makes a difference sometimes is the presence of math. Now, usually in a real class, I'll have everybody raise their hands and I'll say always like, who in here hates math? Like if you hate math, you have to take the ACT because there's only a quarter of your score based on math on the ACT. A full 1/2 of your score on the SAT is based on math. How does that even make sense? Like, in what college curriculum are you taking half math classes? My brother went to MIT and majored in math and didn't even take 50% math classes. And yet the SAT is like, no, we're looking at your math score is the same. Like, what if 3 out of 6 of your, excuse me, high school classes were math? That's crazy, but that's really good news for some people who love math. If you love math and don't like the verbal portion so much, you got to take the SAT because they're really overweighting the math portion of it. Well, I don't like math or verbal. I don't like going fast or doing tricky questions. I don't know. You can be a welder. They make a lot of money and you don't have to take the SAT for that. But, pick your poison, I guess is what I'm saying. If having heard this and having tried both practice tests, and many of you were in both of our events, and you can actually look and compare, just Google like equivalence and you'll see which one you did better on. If you don't know and or your scores are about the same, take them both or just take the one you like more. I don't know. It doesn't really matter that much, but you may find that you surprise yourself in what you do well on. And the only reason to take the SAT and the ACT in the first place is to open more college doors. So if your grades are already good enough to get into the colleges you want to get into, the tests aren't that important. If you just need to get a certain score on one or the other and you're better on the SAT naturally, just focus on that one. But if you're really trying to game the game as hard as you can, take them both. Take the March SAT and turn around and take the April ACT, and then whichever one you do better on, retake in June, and then to use your May SAT date as the SAT 2 subject tests, and you'll be sitting in an incredibly good position by the end of junior year, and you won't have to worry about these stupid things ever again. So those are my logistic recommendations: when to take the tests, where to take the test, to sign up for the place that's closest to your house. During the pandemic, it's very good if you can test at a site that has recently actually given a test. A lot of places keep saying they're going to do it and they keep canceling every time. You can't trust those flaky schools. Find a place that's actually done it. But like I said, hopefully that's going to be improving a lot more in SoCal than it's been. Okay. If I've missed anything about logistics, when to test, how many times to take the test. By the way, theoretically, you can take the test as many times as you want. Some colleges start to not like it if you take the test more than twice. But you could still do SAT 2 times and ACT 2 times. You got to have one score out of those 4 attempts. All schools will be fine with that. There are also schools that allow you to super score, which means use your best verbal from one time and your best math from another and combine them. That sounds really great, but then again, everybody can do that. So it does sort of jack the averages up, which is why there's all these fancy schools are able to brag about their, like, look at our really high SAT averages. Well, we made the kids all combine all their best scores and nobody actually got these scores. But anyway, just do the best you can and then apply and see what happens. Okay, let's talk about what you guys are really here for. So how do I raise my scores? I was glancing through everybody's scores and nobody got a perfect score. So everybody's got at least a little bit of room to improve on here. But you want to, of course, focus on the sections where you can bring your score up more. And we're going to go through all of the different sections, one question in each, because I want to give you guys some actual usable real question tips here that we can talk about. First, a couple of general things though. This first one is pretty obvious, and I hope you guys all did this instinctively, but guys, there's no penalty for guessing anymore on these tests. Once upon a time, there was actually a quarter deduction penalty on the SAT for getting a question wrong. That doesn't exist anymore. They did away with that in 2016. And so now, guessing randomly on a question, if you get it wrong, you get 0 points. If you leave a question blank, you for sure get 0 points. So why not guess on everything? Always bubble in every single question on your sheet, even if you're just making things up. That doesn't mean you actually have to do every question. There's an anecdote I like to use on the math sections of these tests. We'll use the ACT because it's got 60 questions, a nice round number of math questions, although the SAT actually has 58 math questions divided between the two sections. So you can use the same thing. But imagine you were sitting in a banquet room with a big banquet table in front of you. And spread out across that table are 60 different sized cakes. Now in the front, we got these itty bitty little cupcakes, tiny little things, gobble them up in one bite. Then as you go back, the cakes get a little bigger. We have like a regular size cupcake and then a slightly larger cupcake. And then there's like a pie. And then in the back, there's like this huge birthday cake and a 10-layer wedding cake draped in sewage. I'm going to pay you $10 for every cake that you can eat in an hour. Where do you start? With the itty bitty little cupcakes, right? Like if I'm going to pay you $10 to eat this cupcake real quick, or I'll pay you $10 for eating a giant wedding cake, why would you eat the wedding cake? Why wouldn't you do the easy job for $10? Always find the easiest questions that you can do and eat as many of them as you can. Do all of the math questions at the beginning of the sections. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the math questions go from easy to hard. On the SAT especially, but on the ACT to some extent as well. They get harder and bigger as they go. So don't worry about the last few. What if you just can't eat 60 cakes? That's way too many. I'm not going to get through 60 cakes, some of which are gigantic. I can't get through 60 math questions in an hour. That's insane. It is insane. There's hardly anyone who can do that. There's like 1 out of 10,000 kids who's able to get all 60 questions out of 60 right. And this is like, you know, of all of the people competing for spots at MIT, like most of them miss at least a few of them. Don't worry about those. Still guess. But what if you just went to the last page of math question, just put a big X through it, just to like make yourself breathe easier? Oh, okay, I don't have 60 questions. I have 50 that I'm going to try to do, or 40, or heck, try to get 20 done. If you could get 20 ACT questions done and then guess on the others, you'd still get like a 21 or 22, which is an average score. You can actually skip about a quarter of the questions on either of the two tests and still get like a 600 plus on an SAT section, or a 25, 26, 27 on the ACT if you get all the ones that you did right. So it's not like school. I mean, we said this already, but it's not, the point of this is to be different than school. People always say it's not like what you learn in class. I know, that's the whole freaking point. So don't worry about that. Do as many as you can and then just guess on all the other ones. It's like throwing half the cakes off the table out the window. Maybe the judges won't notice that you threw them out the window. And 1 out of 4 times, if you just bubble B on everything, you'll pick up an extra point. Hey, I count 3 cakes out the window. He doesn't get credit for these. You're like, oh, I threw 4 out the window. So guess, but don't kill yourself trying to get to everything. There's also no such thing as a most correct answer. Well, I mean, there is in a way, but really how these tests work is there's one right answer. And then there's 3 or sometimes 4 wrong answers. It's not like they're all right and one's more right. No, those other ones are just wrong. Unarguably, categorically incorrect. So sometimes, and I know a lot of you get in this situation sometimes, so you get it narrowed down to 2, and then you're like, these both seem right. Well, they're not. One of them's wrong. But they're worded really cleverly, so it's hard to tell. And a lot of times, especially in the SAT, the one that's wrong will be worded like real friendly looking, and the one that's right will be worded in these cryptic words that you don't know. And so you pick the friendlier looking one, and you get the question wrong. You fall right into their traps. When you get to those last couple steps, guys, my advice, stop worrying about which one you like better and start figuring out which one is wrong. One of them has a flaw. It might only be one word that makes it wrong, but there is something wrong somewhere. To demonstrate this, I actually want to do a reading passage with you guys real quick. It's a super short one, obviously smaller than you'd ever see on your real test for the sake of our time here. But let's look at this, and then we'll return to that idea of how one of these answer choices, A through E, is right. It's not wrong. The other 4 are wrong, and we're going to talk about the wrong answer types they use to try to trick you on the SAT and the ACT. So let's take a quick look at this. Excuse me. My first advice on reading passages, don't worry, I don't have COVID. I'm just coughing because it's dry outside and windy. It's a lot funnier for me to say that when I'm not in the same room with you, of course. First thing we do on the reading passages is we want to get the main idea. Some of you guys really struggle with some of those SAT passages that are written like 100 years ago by two French philosophers arguing over garbage. Like, what is this person even saying? I can't even follow this at all. You don't need to get every line. You just need to get the main idea. This lady is arguing that women should have similar rights as men. This man, this sexist guy from 300 years ago, is arguing that no, to give men and women the same rights is to demean both genders. Well, I don't agree with that. It doesn't matter if you agree with it. You're just trying to summarize what the person said. Look for that secret word that kind of gives it away. Now, this one's a little easier, but it's also a little cryptic. Let's go for this main idea here, guys, at least out of the whole thing, but maybe the main idea of each paragraph. So we've got here, daily life is overflowing with mundane mental events. I don't know what that word means, but they're going to give me some examples. A paperclip gleams amid stacks of documents. A friend's face shines like a beacon out of a crowd. Smell of freshly baked bread evokes childhood memories. Thoughts and perceptions such as these flow by with monotonous ease. So I'm going to go ahead and write in my margin a little note here about like perception seems easy. I look around the room, I just see some stuff like, oh, look, a poster. Oh, look, a computer screen. Oh, look, a catchy logo. Okay, no big deal. My brain just processes that and moves on. So great. So it seems anyway, ooh, transition word. Notice how I'm marking this up. You can do this too if it's helpful to you. You know, write things in the margin, underline, circle keywords. Yet, I always like to circle transition words. Given what scientists know about how the brains work, even the ability to perceive a paperclip on a messy desk represents an extraordinary and mysterious achievement. So I'm going to say for my second paragraph, perception seems easy, but wow, it's really cool. We can do that. It's amazing. Our brains are amazing organs. Okay, great. I have deciphered the main idea of this science passage, which typically passages 2, 3, and 5 on your SAT and passages 2 and 4 on your ACT will be fairly straightforward, sometimes kind of boring, but your job is to get the main idea. Okay, now you knew that a little bit, although those are some tips for reading it a little bit more effectively. Step 2, of course, is to decode the question. This sometimes is very easy. It'll just say, what's the main idea? You're like, well, I know what that means. Other times, like this one, they get a little cryptic on you. In the first paragraph, by the way, this is a clue. There is a rule called out of scope, where if they give you something from paragraph 2, and then one of the answers is from paragraph 1, and then the answers from paragraph 2, that's wrong because that's not the part they asked about. So first paragraph means that anything from down here is off limits for this question. The author implicitly likens our experience of sensory impressions to. That might need to be read 2 times and decoded a little bit because it's written so cryptically. The author implicitly likens, you mean like compares our sensory impressions? Well, what sensory impressions? Oh, you mean like the paperclip, the friend's face? Well, I said that those things just seem easy. So I'm going to make a prediction. I like predicting what kind of answer I'd like to see. I'm not going to get the words exactly right, but my prediction is the answer is going to be something about how like it's not a big deal that our brains can do that. So I then go through the answers and I do what I call a yes, no, maybe. Just a real quick judgment call on each of these about whether I'm going to eliminate them right away or whether I'll leave them hanging around. The first one, an emotional roller coaster, seems like a strong no. This actually violates 2 out of the 3 wrong answer choices. By the way, if you guys write one thing down about these tricks, this one might be a good one. Their most favorite type of wrong answer choice on the SAT is something that we call never said that. Also the ACT. This is an answer choice that, I don't know, might be true in real life. Maybe even kind of seems like it might be true. They just technically never said that. Then it's wrong, 100% wrong. And they never talked about anything emotional here. So that could be eliminated right away because of that. It also has something called too extreme. Your second favorite type of wrong answer type is called too extreme, which pushes it too far. Even if it was emotional, a roller coaster, give me a freaking break. This is a terrible answer choice. Do not pick A. The third one, by the way, is out of scope. These are the only 3 ways they ever write the wrong answer choices on the SAT or ACT. So if you look at every question and be like, did they actually say that? Yeah. Was it very extreme? Not really. Was it from the right part? Yeah. Well, then it's the right answer. If it's not one of those three things, then it's gone. B is a little bit trickier. In fact, it's sort of a convoluted looking answer. An unobstructed stream. What is, is a lot of people's reaction to this answer. My suggestion is if you see one that gives you that reaction, just skip it and move on. Don't even make a judgment about B. Say, I got to think about B. It's very complicated. We'll leave it. A repeated image. Now, some people like this answer, but I would ask, what was repeated? The paperclip? Second paragraph, off limits. So for that reason, we can get rid of this. I'll even argue that image is wrong because, yeah, paperclip is an image, friend's face. Third one was a smell, though. Well, but it was 2/3 right. Well, then it's all thirds wrong. Everything needs to be always right by definition and necessity on these tests. Anything that's the least bit wrong, even just a little bit too extreme, is eliminated. That's why it's hard. But if you know what to look for, it becomes easier. A nostalgic reminiscence. Okay, maybe I like that one a little bit. I'll leave it in. And diverting daydream. Where's the daydream exactly? And also, is it so diverting that you like crash your car into a tree? Like you're so busy staring at a paperclip that you got into an auto accident? This one kind of smells like too extreme to me. So I'm going to eliminate it. Now, here's the part where a lot of people fall off the boat. They're like, I don't really know what B says, so I'm going to pick D because it looks nicer. Wrong. That's how you get these wrong, because you just fell right into their trap. Well, is it wrong because it's got friendlier words and the other one's got harder words and the harder word one is always the right answer? Not necessarily, although that does happen a fair amount on these tests. This is wrong because it's wrong. And let's inspect these words a little more carefully. What is a reminiscence? Isn't that a memory? You mean like a paperclip gleams in present tense? A friend's face shines in present. Those aren't memories. I will give you the third one. I will give you that smell of freshly baked bread. That could be a nostalgic reminiscence. Nostalgic means with a feeling of sentimentality. But like the other two aren't. You're not nostalgic of thinking about a paperclip. Like, oh, that paperclip. We had such good times attaching papers to each other. Like, shut up. This answer is terrible. No, the right answer is B. I'll explain why in a minute. But be ruthless like this. Everything needs to be all the way right. One example was sort of like that. No, that wasn't the theme. We just said perception seems easy, like something that flows by, like a stream flows by without really any breakages, unobstructed. If you don't like B, where were the obstructions? Well, there weren't any. Okay, well, so it was unobstructed then? Okay. And stream, you mean like just something that flows? But I just don't like B. Well, you're not going to like the SAT then either, because that's what the SAT is. It's a thinking exercise. It's a dumb one, but it's got a very small set of rules that you have to master. And when you do that, the whole thing becomes a heck of a lot easier if you just learn the rules of the game. All right, let's talk about two other questions here, and then I'll loop back for point 3 to finish, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A with whatever time we have left at the end. We'll probably go a few minutes after 6 for those of you who stick around. If you got a heart out, no worries. I understand. The packet, by the way, hold on to this packet. Hopefully you guys got it in the email. You can print it out and keep it, but this is what we're working on now. The writing section, which is the English section on the ACT, section 1, SAT is section 2, mostly tests grammar. And when I say mostly tests grammar, I mean like 75% of the questions are like question 1 here, where they're like, how do we fix this part? Or should we? Should we just leave this like it is? Is it okay? No change. Well, you need to learn that there are 7 grammar rules on the ACT and SAT. Things like connectors, which this is, verbs, pronouns, brevity. The tiebreaker on this section is keep everything short. If you aren't sure, pro tip, if you have to guess on some grammar questions, just pick the shorter one. Like measure it with your fingers and pick the one that has fewer words. That's a good tiebreaker on this. This one is asking us about things like colons and semicolons. So make sure you know how those things work. Guys, a semicolon is a period. As far as you're concerned, it's the exact same thing as a period. A semicolon must separate 2 complete sentences. And although the way they wrote it, you could put a semicolon here, but in C, they changed lists to listing, which makes this part not a incomplete sentence, so we can't do C. We also can't ever have a comma separating 2 complete sentences like we're doing in the no change version. So even though the answer will be no change, sometimes it's not here. The best answer here is going to be B, because a colon, although it sets up lists, can also set up any answer to the question you just posed. And in this case, these are examples of ways that he fudges the date of his birth. He says his birthday was July 4th, and he says the year was different. So that's why B is the best answer. We wouldn't put a colon right here. Even if you don't feel super comfortable with colons and semicolons, now you know it's going to be on your SAT and ACT, so get familiar with it. There's just really 7 concepts that you need to learn up on. Whether you're naturally good at grammar or not doesn't matter. I've had students who hate reading and hate grammar become very good at this section because they just learned that it's basically math with words. It's the application of a few grammar rules applied over and over and over again in slightly different ways. And there really aren't that many rules to learn. So that's part 1 of this. And just doing that will get you really far. The other thing you got to keep in mind, though, and this is for many of our higher scoring students, not all the questions are grammar. About 1 out of 4 questions is what we call an assignment question, where they say, hold on a second, stop. We aren't just going to go into no change versus 3 substitutions. We're going to ask you to do something different. And this requires a different part of your brain here. You got to say, hold on, okay, what are you asking me? Given that all these are true, which best provides the transition into the rest of the essay? Now, we don't have the rest of the essay here, but notice that the thing was called Labor Patriot, and it's about how he got involved in the labor movement. So maybe the one that's about labor activism, that is going to be the right answer. All of these are grammatically fine, but I don't really care where he grew up or where he was born. I care about what they're asking me to care about. It's like your boss says, hey, I want you to come to work tomorrow dressed as a clown and you have to have a blue nose. Why? Don't worry, don't ask me questions. I'm your boss, just do it. Like, I mean, maybe that could be some kind of weird harassment suit, but you know, if your boss says do it, then okay, maybe you work at the circus. Just do what they're asking. Like they're this is weird to say, but like they're already sure that teenagers are great at questioning authority. Sometimes teenagers aren't that great about reading instructions and following them. So like kind of they're testing that. So they're just seeing if you can do what you're supposed to do here. We're supposed to add something that's a transition, and C is the right answer here. So beware, you're going to get about a quarter of those that are like, whoa, stop doing grammar for a second, and instead switch gears. So brush up on your usual suspects of grammar, and then be prepared for assignment questions. For the reading, make sure you understand and know how they ask questions and give wrong answer choices. Both of those will lead to success on the verbal portions of these tests. Now, we did the science one already, but I want to end with one of my favorite questions, which is a math one. And guys, this part is obvious, but there's always a math way to do these. Like you can always just do the math, but sometimes you don't remember how to do the math. Or sometimes you're trying to do the math and it's not really working. And this one is particularly annoying because a lot of people don't spend a lot of time on this math concept. Some of you might remember it. Division of polynomials or synthetic division would be another math way to do this problem. And a lot of people are like, I know of that thing. I heard that word before, but I definitely can't do this question that way, even though the answer choices are right here. Well, guys, I would say in that case, take advantage of the fact that the answers are right here and use one of the wonderful patented SAT tricks that are available to you to just smash these questions without ever having to do the math. Turns out any math purist will tell you multiple choice is a garbage way to test math on any kind of reasonable situation, because you can just do these cheats to figure out what the answer is without having any idea how to do it. And that's not really important on the SAT. Yeah, if I was your math tutor, I would say, yes, let's learn how to do this the proper math way, but I don't care about that. If I'm teaching you, if I'm tutoring you on the ACT or I'm teaching your class, I just want you to get this right. I don't really care how. And a great way to get this one right is with a trick that we call make up numbers. And it's a pretty self-explanatory strategy too, because the first thing you do is you make up a number. I'm going to pretend that X is 1. Well, but Paul, how do you know that X is 1? I don't, but how do you know it isn't? Well, I want X to be 9. I want X to be 472. Why do you like pain so much? Just make it 1. It's so easy. It can't, by the way, the only thing it can't be is you can't do something that doesn't work. Like you can't make x be -3 because then we'd have a 0 in the denominator and a black hole would eat us all. And I'm not doing that again. But just why not pick one? As long as it will be plugged into your problem, all you need to do is say step 1, let's figure out what happens when I make this number up. Step 2, you plug this number into not even the answer choices yet, just the question. So I'm going to take x as 1 and I'm going to plug it in here and I'm going to figure out what this would be. So if I put a 1 here and a 1 here, I get 5 minus 2. So it's going to be 3 on the top, and on the bottom I have 1 plus 3 is 4. All right, and I know you guys can't really react here in our Zoom room, but are you with me so far? If I said that x was 1, this thing would come out to be 3/4. Does everybody see that? If I had picked x as 2, it'd be something different. I don't care. I just need one plug-in example. Okay, if you've gotten that far, the only other thing you got to do is take the same number and plug it in to the answer choices. So now I'm going to take x as 1 and I'm going to plug it into all of these answers and I'm going to see which one comes out to be 3/4. Whichever one comes out to be 3/4 is my correct answer. Now, I didn't like A and B very much to begin with, but I definitely don't like them now. By the way, the reason I didn't like them before is because, like, where did the x go? I don't remember how to do this algebra, but I don't think x just disappears. And now we know they're wrong because this comes out to be 3/3, which is close to 3/4, but close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. 5 minus 2/3, isn't that 4 and some change? 4 point, who cares? Or 4 and 1/3 to be precise. That's nowhere near 3/4. I'm looking for 3/4, not some big number that's north of 4. And C is the same problem. This is going to be 2/4, which is like 1/2. So this one equals 4.5. That's also way too high. So unless I did something wrong, the answer is D. Let's, of course, check it just to reassure you all. But this is going to come out to be 5 minus 17/4. And 17/4, guys, remember 4 goes into 17 4 times. So 4 times, and then there's 1 left over. So 5 minus 4 1/4. Oh, right. Equals, of course, 3 1/4. That's how we get problem 15, which is one of the harder math problems on the test it came from, right, without having any idea how to do the math. The SAT and the ACT aren't really interested in whether you're good at math. They already have your math grades. They're interested in whether or not you're clever. Now, I'm not going to lie. Being good at math is helpful. Being good at math certainly makes this test easier than if you are not good at math. And I'm not going to say you can't do the math or that you shouldn't do the math. But you do got to know, guys, that this is partly that, but it's partly just a cleverness and test takers test. This is America. You can either be smart or you can be clever. It doesn't really matter. Plug my computer in and a big finish here. It doesn't really matter which one you are. You can go get good grades and go to good college, get into a good medical school, become a doctor, and eventually own the hospital. Great. This country is full of people who are successful by doing it the by the book way. But you can also drop out of college and start Facebook. So either way is fine. And the SAT and the ACT, they're fine with you doing it this way. In fact, I don't know, they kind of want you to, I think. They like it when you take shortcuts and so forth. Do it the math way if you have those skills, but don't be afraid to try to go in the window if you can't get in the front door. So that is my final question. Last note about improvement is that improvement, guys, has 3 parts. And the first part of this you already did, and you did a tremendous job on this. Do practice questions. Do practice time tests, even if you only have 9 minutes to just do one little reading passage or a couple of math questions or something. Do it. It's good practice. It's good exercise. But then you have to review your mistakes. So the next thing you got to do is go home and take a look at these answers and see which ones you missed and didn't miss and figure out how you can figure those out next time and then learn from those mistakes. Whether it's a math concept you didn't know, a grammar rule you didn't spot, or a wrong answer type you didn't notice, you will see these same questions again. This is what standardized means. The SAT has to be the same thing every time. Otherwise, they can't compare some kid taking the test in March in Culver City versus some kid taking it in May in Louisiana. If it wasn't basically the same exact test, they couldn't say this kid did better than this kid. So just learn from it. It's a flawed test. Take advantage of those flaws and exploit it as best you can. Guys, I have been talking for an hour already here. I'm going to shut my yap and take some questions from you guys. Probably the best way to do that, given the number of people we have, is to throw it in the chat. While you guys are typing any questions that you have, I would finish by saying there's some more information here about the stuff that we do. Like I said, PJ Test Prep does SAT, ACT, private tutoring via Zoom, and we're starting to go in person. Backyards and stuff are working well at this point. We have classes that are full-length classes that cover everything you need to know on the test. If you think these tips were good, this is just the tip of the iceberg here. I'll be teaching most of our classes come this spring. In fact, we have a discount here I'll tell you about in just a second. We also do academic tutoring, like if you're just sucking at chemistry or you need help in pre-calc. We can help support you either virtually, or some of our tutors are going back in person. As well as, by the way, well, there aren't any seniors here, but we do essay consulting too on your college application essays. For you Culver students, I am actually offering a $50 sign-up discount for anybody who signs up tonight or tomorrow. On our website, pjtestprep.com, oh, I actually should have said /Culver, where you guys signed up, culver.html. Let me go there right now and show you. There is a discount page where you can get a pretty good discount on any classes if you sign up now. So here is the page, and here's the link, and you'll see down here that you can now sign up for these cheapened classes, and that will be available tonight. It'll be available tomorrow. The last page of our thing has the schedule for the rest of the spring. February's ACT, March's SAT, and April's ACT. So you can sign up for any of those classes there on the website. Okay, let me be quiet and answer the couple questions that have come in. I was wondering if I could get the link to the packet. There isn't a link to the packet right now, but just email me, Madison, and I will send it back to you. It's a paper copy of what you're seeing on your screen right now. Are the slides available? Oh, same question from Laura. You didn't get them via email. That's so weird. Yeah, you guys will have access to the video. Let me actually just send a note to send out packet. I'll just send it to everybody in case you somehow didn't get it. Check your spam folder. We had a few people who links to things went into the spam folder, although if you got into here, that's a good sign. And I'll send the video link as well once we get that. I gotta upload it real quick. But yeah, if you want to pass this along to friends who couldn't make it to this, you're certainly welcome to. This is information free. Obviously, we're here as a resource. You know, if you guys want to hire me or us to help you crank these scores into the stratosphere, we're certainly happy to do that. But I hope that we've shoved you guys in the right direction already today, so that you don't even need us necessarily. But we are happy to help if you guys need anything. Other questions about when to take the test, how to score higher, what the heck my scores mean. Hopefully I'm relatively thorough here. Also, after we unofficially end, you guys are of course welcome to stick around if you have particular questions about your scores. And you can always email or call us. My information here is at the bottom. My email address is paul@pjtestprep, although do email Lisa at pjtestprep if you have questions about your test, because she's doing all our grading. My phone number is here. This is my cell phone. You guys can call me anytime and ask questions. I'm often in sessions, so I can't always answer, but I will always call you back. And that's basically the deal. Feel free to look here on the handout for our schedule. It's also available on the website. Does anybody have any other questions that I can cover? You got a minute to think on it. And you'll have this packet, like I said, it's got logistics on the front page. Second page was our tips to raising scores. Then we have some information about what we do and the sign up thing going on this last page with our schedule. Okay, well, if there aren't any questions, guys, I thank you all so much for being here. Again, I'm Paul Jury. We are PJ Test Prep. We are here to help if you need any help maximizing the college options that you've got. But just let us know how we can help you guys going forward. And do take advantage of that class discount. Those spring classes are usually really popular, even with the pandemic going on. We will be doing them all in person if we can, but there will for sure be a Zoom option like this. So even if I'm in the classroom, I'll also be teaching the class this way, and you guys can be a part of it that way if you don't want to drive down to Hermosa or you don't want to, risk or have to wear a mask for 2.5 hours. Anyway, let us know. You guys are so welcome. I thank you for being here, and feel free to stick around at the end if you need. But guys, we're here to help. PJ Test Prep, let me know if you have any questions about it. Thank you so much. You're welcome, guys. You're welcome. You're welcome, everyone. Thank you so much. And let me know if you have any specific questions, folks who are left.